tell you a little bit about Steve Johnson. We've been working with Steve for many years, as I've said, in terms of conducting social surveys across Africa and the sharing of data and the development of products. One thing I've learned about Steve over all these years is in terms of the Africa situation, he is the go-to man. There is nothing that Frontline or Steve and them are not willing to look at. Really, we consider them to be the experts in terms of the conducting of social surveys as well as retail censuses in African countries. And we've been working a lot with them in that regard. And Steve really is a specialist, as you will hear in the presentation that he's going to be giving to you now, in terms of the development of commercial or the conducting of commercial and development research in the African context. And of course, a very strong focus of Frontline has been on the conducting of retail censuses, not only in South Africa, but many African countries. So what I am going to do is I'm going to now hand over to Steve. He's going to do his presentation and we can go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Thanks for that awesome introduction. Hello, everyone. Nice to see everyone. I can see some names I know very well, so that's just adds a little bit more pressure. So that's fantastic. But yeah, let's have some fun. I'm gonna dive straight into it. I think Craig has set up the scene as to what we're about to achieve. As you said, just write up some notes on the side, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Okay. So just to reiterate, data for Africa, guys, the retail universe data is the foundation of more than just route to market and planning and business market developments in Africa. Obviously, South Africa is part of Africa. A lot of people make that misconception. But what I'm going to start off with is I'm going to be talking a lot about Africa out of South Africa. As Craig has mentioned, we do have a lot of data in South Africa, but so does everyone else. The availability of data in Africa, or generally South Africa, is very, very good. So we do compete with a lot of companies in that space, and obviously we do have a bit of a unique selling point in the granularity of the data that we try to uncover for our clients, and we can go into a little bit more about that and the why. All right, just to remind you of the content, what makes running a retail census project exciting, I'm just going to kind of set the scene a bit and the lay of the land about Africa and why we love it so much and why we do what we do and what gets us up in the morning. What value can be extracted from it and making sense of the census. Obviously, it's a hell of a lot of data out there, and making the best out of it and the best nuggets that you can get out of it and exception reports in order to drive strategy and tactics is not always easy if you don't have the right team behind it. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then obviously merged into that, it blends into each other. Obviously from a value perspective is the strategic benefits of accessing this data in its different ways and forms in order to really take it to the next level. And the next level in my mind is the visualization of that data. And I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot and an example of a case study of that visualized data that we like to have a lot of fun with. Okay. So what makes running a retail census project exciting? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I drive my team in the market based on passion and love for the country and the search and the actual walking of the streets to gather the most accurate and relevant data in Africa. So when we talk about Africa, we talk about 1.3 billion people or so. It's around 50% of them are urbanized, and that's always changing, obviously, with the modernization of the world. And obviously, there are 54 countries. It can be argued at 55. And there's many languages and many tribes, and it's split into multiple regions. Now, depending on what sector you're from, will then tell you how you're going to split those regions. It's known as North Africa, West Africa, East and Central and Southern Africa, and then you get the islands as well. So a lot of people will call them differently, and they will segment the continent geographically differently, and that's what makes it even more exciting. And even though it looks like a big puzzle piece, there's a lot of blending of the countries into each other. And what's really interesting is the cultures that we can find in all these countries. Just take South Africa, for example. There are 9 provinces. And I always joke with my clients and I say, you know, it's not 9 provinces, it's 9 countries. Because if you in KZN, you in a spaza shop or in a mall or by the beachfront bar, it is a total different vibe and a different culture and a different perception on not only the retail owners, but also the customers and shoppers. So you cannot, the notion of one size fits all comes into play. You cannot have a blanket approach, not even in a single country. So you really need to look at how you dissect the markets that you work in and you live in, and you try and building a reputation and a brand in a market. It gets convoluted. It's very, very busy. It's very colorful, and we'll go into that as well. And then obviously just a fun fact is, the natural wonders are Kilimanjaro and Vic Falls, but for me it's more the people. The people are the natural wonders. They're always smiling. They're always happy. And they're an absolute pleasure to work with across the continent. And that's what drives us. We're really excited to work with local partners and driving their capabilities and training them and executing projects with them. And we do that with our people. And on these pictures, you can see our guys getting their hands dirty. They go into the market. And this is more the informal market. And that's where it all happens in Africa. The modern trade is maybe 1-2% of the market. Yes, you get a lot of value and volume out of them. But to be honest, when you're looking at Pareto outlets, which we'll go into, you really need to unpack the informal market, or the bottom of the pyramid, where all of the action is happening. And that is where you kind of win, and that is how you grow your market. And we have a philosophy with our staff, and that is you've got to talk and meet the people, you've got to eat the food and drink the beer. Now, I think these pictures were randomly chosen, but they seem to like the beer selling outlets a lot when they take pictures. So we are kind of experts in the alcohol industry and some others. So these are our people, and people is what makes our projects exciting. And I suppose it's almost like a wedding where you got to plan a project, no matter how big or small. You got to plan how you visualize seeing that coming out at the end, and all the risks that are involved and the bumps along the road. Because at no one day, no one project is the same in Africa. It doesn't matter which country that you're busy in. You really need to respect it, and that's what I mean by what makes project running in Africa exciting, especially at Frontline. There are many stories that we can talk about, and I'm sure with some guys on the call, I've actually walked the trade with you and shared a beer, but I'm sure that we've also seen some things that we couldn't actually believe. So what's important about this is when you put people in the country, it's important for them to observe the market very carefully, because when the data comes back into our servers and they're collecting data with our software, sometimes that data doesn't look readable or believable. And often in the case it is, because there are no rules in Africa when it comes to the traditional trade. People do what they need to do to survive, and they're very innovative in that. And when I show you the next stage of pictures, if I look at Kenya, Mozambique, and Rwanda, we look at, when you know what you're observing and what you're looking for, there are many channels and segments in the market, and some of them look the same, but they behave very differently. And the data that we collect and the data that you require in order to make, informed business decisions, some of those data points and nuggets are exceptionally important to understand so that you can leverage off it and take advantage of it. Because sometimes those are the unique points that you need to do to give you that edge in order to drive your market share or volume or your product into the market in the most affordable and the most effective way. So if I look at this, 4 things come to mind. The density of outlets and their proximity to each other in Africa. You can be in Angola and the DRC, and there's a tabletop that people tend to say we don't interested in tabletops, but there are 4 tabletops. They sell more tobacco or more alcohol than the modern trade liquor store that is delivering products into bigger stores. And the reason for that is people like to support people. And in their traditional trade, in open marketplaces and structured marketplaces, the amount of feet and foot traffic and eyeballs on those markets is phenomenal. And that is where you need to identify that opportunities, those density hotspots that can really take you to the next level. And that's what really excites us as well. So the mode of transport and the volume of it, there's as many people walking the street as there are vehicles. Now that talks volumes to your route to market strategies and your logistics and your supply chain. In Rwanda, for example, you see these mopeds. Now Rwanda, by direct translation, is called the land of 1,000 hills. And it's literally that. And in order for distributors and mini distributors to get products to outlets and multiple outlets on the main streets and also deep rural, mopeds is the form of transport. you need to take all those considerations and those concepts together when planning not only your route to market designs, but also the survey designs in order to extract the information, ask the right questions, which we'll go into a bit later. The conditions of the roads and infrastructure around the outlets, very important. You know, when you're driving through Nairobi or Lagos or in Gabon, you might see cars that you've never seen in your life before, and you can just imagine the complexity of how people make things work and how people tick and how they make decisions. And all these things, this environment is what we need to observe, we need to digest, and we need to extract from our surveys in order to give really meaningful insights to clients, depending on which sector they're in. Now, obviously, we're talking retail here, and retail is quite diverse, FMCG products, CPG products, etc. And there's different ways these outlets behave. But this can be also applied to the public sector. So what I mean by that is the Ministry of Health and the way that the distribution of medicines happen to the last mile. Very similar to projects that we're running in Mozambique and South Africa in understanding and giving line of sight as to the opportunities and the scenarios that are required in order to get medicines and life-saving medicines to the last mile in the most efficient and effective ways across the various regional borders and the landscape that can actually be quite intense and actually very risky, especially in things like dry season and wet season. So there's lots to be taken into consideration. The other thing is the colorfulness and the innovation of the people. Innovation, I don't just talk about technology and so forth. It's a mindset that that the African-centric people have in making things work. You can see distribution, modes of transport. You're not going to see that in the middle of Detroit in America. You're only going to find in the likes of emerging and developing markets. And that's what really needs to come out in our data in order to give really effective and useful insights that can be taken into action. All right. Here's just another couple of pictures of kiosks. Now, I can go into a lot of detail when it comes to channel segmentation and how best to kind of unpack them. But what's important to understand here is the nuggets and aha moments that you can actually extract from these small outlets. They're small in size, but I can tell you that some of these stores do more volumes than your Spars and Super Spars and Pick and Pays at any one time. And they shouldn't be undermined. These outlets is where it all happens. We believe that this is where we really focus on finding out and how to win in the market, and that means to increase our distribution and penetration, both horizontally and vertically. And these little stores are known as different in different markets. So in your French-speaking countries, in your Francophone countries, versus your East African countries, and in your Portuguese-speaking countries, these names can go from a kiosk to a spaza shop, to a mom and pop store, to a spaza store, and then multiple, and a duka. And there's multiple ways that you can nominate these outlets to be. But what's important is their structure, their behavior, their position, and a hell of a lot more than just, what they look like and what they sell. There's so much more insights that can be gleaned from the right survey and the right technology in order to inform the business on better decision-making processes. And business casing things like better investment of assets and marketing material on POS. So there's a whole lot of information that can be gleaned just from a photo, but also the questions that get asked at these points of sale. So we talked about data access. Now, I'm giving an overview. I'm not saying that there's only bad data out there, but I know the pain points that our clients have, and that's the reason why clients come to us and other research houses that are very good at collecting data. So when you access data, well, the access data is many places. So you can go to the ministries, you can go to the Chamber of Commerce, you've got your local suppliers, you've got your local team, you've got your own data. And generally what we find with that data, once we stress test it and really look at it and digest it, is there's a couple of pain points that come from it. And I suppose we can see ourselves as doctors in trying to solve these pain points. But these pain points are quite pain points that will actually break down your decision-making process and could actually be very harmful to your business. So it's very important to qualify this data. And what we're finding is this data is either not granular enough to make really informed decisions. it's outdated and it's of bad quality. It hasn't really been looked at and extrapolated correctly. People have over extrapolated and they've got the wrong weightings. It's changed hands too much. Or the main thing for me is, in my view, in the way that we want to look at data, is it can't be mapped because it doesn't have a GPS point. And that is very important. And not just a GPS point, a correct GPS point, which we'll go into a bit later as well. So here's the need for the data. And now we're going to talk about the so what and so what now. So Craig mentioned retail census. Now that comes in many forms and ways and names. So your beverage companies and non-alcoholic beverage companies might refer to as an EDS, which is called an every dealer survey. You may have another non-alcoholic alcoholic beverage companies that call it walk the streets. What we're going to call it as an umbrella name is a census. Now you get population census, you get demographic, and all those kind of, and business censuses. The census I'm going to talk to you about today is more the census evolution, which is the retail census. Now, it's the count of the number of the total universe count within a given area of outlets or facilities or a point of sale or a point of buying that is required in order to understand what the size of the market is. So it's about market sizing and understand the size of the opportunity. Now, the people on the call wouldn't be on the call if they didn't understand or have an interest in the census. So I'm just going to run over this quickly. And it says, keep the end in mind, is that if you reverse engineer this, I want to know how well I'm going to do in the country. And the only way to do that is to track my share and my volume by using tracking or retail tracking studies. Now, in order to get that quality data that I can make decisions on, I kind of need to quantify the retail universe that is applicable to my market and my segment, whether it be a food segment, a beverage segment, a pharma segment, or a motor segment, or so forth and so on. So once you've got that, then you can look at targeting the outlets in the most efficient way, which we'll look at just now. We're then going to plan a route to market. There's many descriptions around what a route to market is. We'll go over that slightly and just give you a very broad overview of what route to market is. But then we talk about implementing the route to market strategy. So when you plan the route to market, it's called a roadmap as to how you're going to enter the market, what data you need to understand the market, and then how do you leverage that even further to implement the best route to market strategy, which includes the full spectrum of a business on how it gets its product from the warehouse or the manufacturing plant all the way to the consumer and the shoppers. And once you implement it, there's a process of doing that with people, process, technology, and product. So there's a whole lot of modules and a whole lot of work streams that go into implementing a route to market strategy. Once you've done it, you need to track the execution of that, which is kind of your foot soldiers, the real live foot traffic or foot soldiers on the ground, and how they get product to the market and how that product will look to your customers. And you need to track that. You need to have the right planograms. You have to have the right product in the right outlet, the right place, the right time, at the right price. And once you've got that, you want to test whether those strategies are working and those tactics are working. You do that through tracking, share, and distribution. So this is what I mean, that retail census is not just for route to market designs, etc. It's actually a whole lot more. So that is why it's very important to have the right methodology and the right partners picking the data up for you on the retail census methodologies. So we like the concept when you're doing analysis, the so what and what now. So this is quite a busy slide, but I'm just going to go over it quickly. When we look at a retail census, we've got to look at, when we keep the end in mind, is what are the questions we want to ask in order to get the right answers, which will then give us the right exception reports and nuggets to business case, what the tactics and strategy should be for a business and what their imperatives are for that market. So when we look at profiling outlet, we're going to start over here. We've got to profile their outlet. We've got to go in and look at who is the customer. Why is he my customer? Why is he not my customer? What is the trade environment within he trades, which means his outlet structure? How does he operate, and so forth and so on. And there's a lot of questions that come and sub-questions that come from being able to profile an outlet with the view of doing various research statistics around that. Then we go and say, well, what else can we do with that data? Well, we can identify opportunities and threats. And those threats could be a supply chain threat, or obviously a competitive threat, or an internal threat of some kind. So where am I missing my potential customers, and are they obtainable? And where is my competitor present, and how do I combat that? This is what the retail census should be able to answer if it's designed correctly and it's able to extract from the survey design. And then once you map it, you can start visualizing exactly where to go, how to go, and what we call go fish where the fish are. What are the low-hanging fruits? These are all the words that you are tending to hear when you're talking about retail census. Once you got all that, you want to be able to optimize your distribution and territory management. What does that mean? So basically, how do I get to my customer from A to B? How do I get it from the warehouse to a distributor and so forth? And I'll show you a visual on that as well. How do you set up my sales territories and staffing? So obviously you can't just, just throw a shotgun approach. You need to have a sniper approach. You need to be smart about how you design your territories around the catchment analysis of your warehouses, your distributors, and so forth. And then you've got to take that and you've got to see how do you optimize that. Optimizing is quite a deep understanding as well. It's not about how quick to get there. It's also about your cost to serve and having the right customer service policy at the point of buying so that you have a sustainable system in place and your brand gets developed correctly across the market, from modern trade all the way to a tabletop in the traditional trade. So you got to keep you have to have a look at the big picture. And then obviously once you got that data and it's very robust and very granular, there's so many ways that you can use that data, not only sampling a retail measurement study as a retail audit or a share audit or a retail scan or so forth and so on, but it also gives you the ability to sample right down to the granular levels. And if you can do that, then you can report much more granularly and with confidence, with the right standard areas and confidence levels. And then obviously what you can do is across many methodologies when it comes to retail, as well as consumer and shopper surveys. And that is when you really get your return of investment. And that's the so what, that's the extraction of value and the strategy that can be developed from doing a retail census, but more than just enumerating outlets, which mean obviously what you're talking about here is the total universe of outlets, which a lot of people keep asking us. And it's not to say that we have the answer, but we do have a lot of answers that can give you the right answer when it comes to the number of retail universe outlets across Africa. So we have it across about 16 different countries at this point, and we continue to update them. All right. So how do you lever this data? Hope that's spelled right. Where to play, how to win, how to keep winning. It's a philosophy as well. So basically, if you break this out into modules, so when we look where to play, that's almost like saying, well, do I want to enter the DRC or Ethiopia with my product? And then you've got to do economic and regulatory environment desktop research. And you want to be able to map that and have, again, the end in mind is saying, this is going to help with the business case as to whether I should do a retail census or any other retail surveys, and it's going to be worth the investment. Because I'm not going to spend something I'm not going to get twofold back. And that's often the conversation I have with my clients. And I actually have a tougher conversation with some clients than others because of their perception in the market. And that's what makes us learn from them and learn from each other. And that's also another exciting point of our research. And obviously, we talk about the universe size, and it goes all the way up to your category size, your brand share, how you're going to put planograms together, etc., and how you're actually going to win in the market. I talked about right outlet, right place, right time, right price. This is what it's all about when it comes to route to market and other surveys that are bolted onto route to market strategies. How to win? Obviously, we know we're not a research company that focus on qualitative research, but more quantitative research. But we do partner with those that can. But that's when you're going to your taste tests and your focus groups, etc., that also add value to these kind of products. And it's important that they have line of sight of what the universe structure looks like and the landscape looks like and how it behaves. That's coming from the retail census again. So then we look at range of assortments. You go look at your marketing mix. Now you're going into multiple departments of this business, not only in sales and distribution, but you should be looking at getting involved with finance. You should be getting involved with the marketing and insights team. You should be looking at the brands team. Everything is bolted on. And it's important that you have cross communication and pollination of information sharing in your company if you're from a Tiger Brands or a Unilever. Often the case is we tell our clients, please give us all the data you have before we go out and complete another data set for you. There's obviously handover issues, etc. And there's often duplicate paying issues where people are buying the data that their company has already bought. So I find that it's very important that there's a cross-pollination between departments, because when you look at this picture, you can see the marriage between the data sets and the needs of a company across all departments. And that's important. And we call that the commercial analysis, so that we can really get the return on investment out of this data that you're getting, which we call a commodity in Africa. And for us, it's an asset. So we really want to use this data to the best of its ability. And then obviously on a consulting side, more is about how to keep winning. Now, this has got to do with really getting to know your client and really understanding change management with them and giving them the capability to have a sustainable business and to keep winning in the market and be able to pivot and be dynamic in the market so that they continue to take advantage of the data as well as the tools and technology and IP that can be delivered outside of a route to market when accessing all this data, both internally and from research firms. So that's a real big summary about how to lever this data, and that it doesn't only answer one question or two questions, it answers a huge amount of questions. And this is normally done over a long-term period, and we become strategic partners to our clients. Okay. All right, now for the fun, exciting stuff. I'm going to go out of this PowerPoint slide and then just show you an interactive map. But geomapping turns data into something that is engaging and approachable. It's something that I've learned over the last 10 years working with Craig and other agencies, is that nothing better than seeing your market and your data and your product and your hard work on a map. It's really tangible, other than obviously beautiful dashboards and graphs and spark lines, etc., and data points. But I must say, I have a love for looking at maps. So an East African case study, I just want to give you an idea of something in Nairobi. If there's anyone from Kenya, that'll be cool for them to look at this. But this is the kind of just a scenario and an example. The numbers are not exact, but you'll get the idea. So what did our client want? They wanted an updated retail census. It was old. They wanted a new one. In my experience, a retail census after every 3 years needs to be updated, maximum 4 years. Otherwise, you're now dealing with what I said in the beginning, unverified or outdated data that is not going to be used for the right thing. But that being said, you can do trends from the 2015 to a 2020, which gives you more insights as well. The objectives of the census is for optimization, resource allocation, and classifying profiling outlets. The methodology to answer those questions is a census and a route to market program that will give them the rights, that will help design the right survey, tag all the outlets, take picture of all the outlets in the defined areas by physically walking every street and then picking it up. And obviously Frontline has a technology, process and methodology and quality control system that allows us to do that. And that means that you'll be able to define your ideal distribution models. You'll be able to build a distribution network out of this data, and also the layers that you get from a Craig, from AfricaScope and Google and TomTom, and there's a whole lot of data points that you can get that can really help you with a distribution network, which involves a lot of data points. And then obviously you can look at secondary distribution. We'll talk about that. Is that there's multiple ways to distribute products across the market, and a lot of companies do secondary distribution or third-party distribution, whereby they import the product and then they find a distribution partner, and then they rely on that partner to distribute down to the market. It does work to a certain degree, and in some cases it doesn't, unless you've got a really decent customer or service policy that is rock solid. Then you can win in the market. If you don't, you'll find that people like to stack them high and let them fly scenario, and they try to push much product as they can wherever they can, and in the end they actually open up for competitors to penetrate the market smartly. And I mean, that's a whole different discussion. And then obviously sale capability development. This is a big part. I'm not to say that there's not a lot of capability in Africa, but obviously in the world, there's a lot of misunderstanding of what is the right way to service a customer. And you often have to change your mindset in order to do that in the best possible and the most efficient way. So this data will be able to help you to understand what is the real value needs of a client or a customer that really wants XYZ from you as a manufacturer or distributor. And we unpack that. So what did we get from doing this project? We found 38,000 points of sale across 9 counties and 24 constituencies. That's how they break up Kenya. Most countries have different ways of segmenting their market geographically, and wards, suburbs, or territories, etc. This is Kenya, for example. They work in counties and constituencies. And of those 38,000 retail outlets, there's 1,500 wholesaler distributors, which obviously is a key point in understanding where the bulk breakers are and where the wholesaling and the bigger volume numbers and volume outlets should be, which we would refer to Pareto outlets, which is your outlets that give you 80% of your volume in 20% of the numbers numerically. And then also what we found is there were 15 trade channels identified. Client might have thought there were 10. We found another 5 that they would need to strategically look at and see how they would service it and see it as an opportunity. Because the market's changing and it's dynamic, especially in Africa in the traditional trade, you've got to keep your finger on the pulse. So what we can get out and glean out of the insights and how they can turn it into action, we like to say turning insights into action is where the value lies. They could do a full coverage review on their current market. They could do credit payment terms and outlets and insights of how money gets exchanged through mobile money and cash and credit. Very important when it comes to supply and demand. And then there's defining and aligning portfolio, so that you can't sell the same products in every single outlet. You know, if you're a company with 46 or 400 SKUs, you really need to have a strategy of where to put it in, again, right place, right time, right product, right portfolio, right price in the market. That also affects how you train your sales team, because your sales team, you know, walking into outlet, selling multiple categories, multiple SKUs, it cannot be easy. You've got to make it easy for them. The same with your distributors. So then we can review the opportunities of the non-handlers. What is a non-handler? It's basically called a dry outlet, not a wet outlet. And then we build trade investment strategies around that as well. So there's a lot of value and strategic intent that you can get out of the census. So what I'm saying here, it's all about layers. And so what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to share my screen. Craig, can you just confirm that you can see a map?
I can see a map.
Excellent. So this is Nairobi. You can Google it, everyone, and you can check it out. But very importantly, I'm just going to take you through a couple of steps on how we visualize the data using data from Craig, software from Craig and team and our own, and making sure that we can really give the aha moment and the wow and what we call the drop mic situation. So what we have here is we have Nairobi. Nairobi looks like that, and it's growing exponentially. It's becoming a megalopolis at the moment. And then we can break it down into constituencies, which there are 17 of them. We can then look at Nairobi wards, which there are 85. So now this map's starting to look a bit different, and you can zoom in and you can start seeing and you can aggregate data within these boundaries. Not necessarily you can do that with numbers on an Excel sheet. So now once you've done that, you can also look at, and this is just an example, is if we look at the client's key distributors, we can see that their distributors are sitting far apart. Now, when we look at East and West, I'm just going to take off these guys, and I'm going to put on the East and West. So this client, for example, wanted, or any client, we just made this up for now, is there's an East and a West. So they can microly understand where the opportunities are. So this is where their distributors would be, and this is how they're going to service the market, but they need to understand where, what, and how. Once we do that, we are able to theme that, and we can look at, you know, the colors, so we can identify, okay, that's East and that's West. If we want to put the client's data on, we can see that they've got two types of channels in this case. We want to open up is a retail and a stockist. The stockist would be like a bulk breaker, and that's what they will be doing. And now we can see, well, once we've done the census, what does it look like? Well, once we do the census and we want to find out where they want to go, how they want to go, then we can immediately see where the opportunity is. And once we know where the opportunity is, then we are able to see what other things we can get out of it. And you can now theme this based on the products they sold, what channels they are, what the volumes are. Depending on the survey design, anything you do can then tell you where to go. So you can immediately see the catchment analysis of where everything is, and you can do a radial catchment and a distance radial analysis as to where the biggest opportunities are, where your Pareto outlets are, linked into a stockist or distributor, or directly to your reps in order to service the market more effectively, instead of running around and trying to find outlets yourself. Generally, clients do that. It's cheaper and more affordable, but generally they miss a lot as well. So it's always best, in my view, to get a third party to do that. If we go to see the opportunities where these outlets are, we also look at the key opportunities, and we take 4 areas that we've looked at here, and then we can say, okay, that's where you want to start, and you can prioritize those areas. And if we go look at that, we can then take a certain day and time, and we can link these outlets to reps, and we can sequentially change them and show them exactly where to go and how to get there. So we can take, if we just turn the retail census off, and that, and now we look at, those are the outlets they want to call on. These are the extra outlets that are ready to increase their distribution and penetration. And we rep each rep by day, and we tell them how long it's going to take, how many reps you need in that area, and how to get your biggest return on investment, and track their due diligence in capturing those outlets using our Salesforce automation partners or software. And that basically, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of maps. And it's very important that you're able to map your data. Now, when you're going to these outlets and you're going down to street level, it's exceptionally important that you're able to make sure that these outlets are right. And that's why GPS, the lateral long, is so important. Like, for example, in Ethiopia, if your data is sitting on the wrong side of the railway track in Addis, you're going to change your routing by 15, 20 minutes, and it will throw your reps hit rate out by a huge percentage, and it will end up costing you a hell of a lot of money. So that is the basic way that you can actually view and observe data in Africa, in any outlet and any layer that you can actually find, and you can dissect that data in any which way possible. And that is the power of maps, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. I know we're running out a little bit of time, but I do have a few more slides just to kind of unpack a few things. Please jot down your questions as we go, and I'm hoping you're finding this somewhat interesting in terms of nuggets of information, and just hearing about the passion about how we love picking up data in Africa. If we look at a route to market specifically, I told you that it is not just how you get a product from a factory or manufacturing plant to an outlet. There's a whole lot of work streams, departments, activities that happen in between that need to be considered, right from financial all the way to packaging and putting a product on a shelf and getting a share of visible inventory. So when you find that there's 3 types of distribution in summary, there's a direct distribution, which is obviously direct to outlets or a depot that then gets passed on from there. Then you get an indirect distribution, which is obviously by a third party, something that you don't own, and then it gets pushed down. Normally that's where you start losing control. And by that I mean the volume, the packaging, or the portfolio, and the price point is where it really falls down. And then in many instances, you get a hybrid. And this is very much coming out of an African centricity, because this is what we found out there that's happening a hell of a lot. And it is one of the only ways to go to market, especially if you're new in the market, depending on your maturity in the market and what you're prepared to invest. Now I'm going to show you basically what my 5-year-old would be drawing. It's going to look like a 5-year-old's pictures, but it's going to drive the message through. So when you start off, you go to the modern trade, and this is your direct distribution, and either to a big distributor. But generally, when you go into factory and you go into a SPAR or a major retailer, you go into a regional warehouse of that retailer or that DC, the direct distributor or depot. They go into the hypermarkets, supermarkets, convenience stores, forecourts. But generally, they don't go to the traditional trade. Only few do go direct, or specialist retailers like hair salons, lubricant stores, and so forth and so on, depending on the category that you're in. So this is how you would service the modern trade, and that's where everyone starts. But like I said in the beginning, the traditional trade is where it's at. That's where 80%, 90% of your market is happening, and that is where you're going to sell huge amounts of product. So when you go to the indirect delivery distribution, it starts getting a bit messy, right? So basically, you got a sub-distributor, then you got a specialist wholesaler. Obviously, there's many names and tags that you can put into this, but I'm sure that you guys will figure it out in terms of what's relevant to you as a business or your clients. And when you look at this, it starts getting messy. There's more arrows. And again, the traditional trade sitting at the back end. This is where people lose line of sight. They know what's happening up here, but generally when it gets to here, they have an opinion on it, and they know somewhat what it's happening. But this is why a retail census and the work that Frontline does becomes very important and very valuable. Then the next one is the drum roll, and basically that is what Africa looks like when you're trying to get product to market. And we need to make sure that the data we collect makes these lines more straighter and less fanned out. And we need a strategy for every touch point and have detailed data that can give you the edge in order to make the right decisions and pivot correctly in order to get supply, demand, and logistics hitting all the right sweet spots. And in Africa, in our experience, there can be anything between 5 and 15 different routes to market. So there's definitely a need for more data, more frequent data, more accurate data, and more mappable data to make more informed decisions. So in closing, the summary of the key messages today, there are 5 key messages. So know everything you can about your market and what opportunities are there for your category, as well as the risks and level of effort involved in playing there. Be careful just running into 20 markets and saying, here I am, I'm ready to play, when you don't know the rules of play, and you don't know the rules of the game, and you don't know who the players are that you're playing against. It's important to understand that first before dipping your toes into the hot waters of Africa. Source or procure the best possible data. You all know my number now. You can reach out directly. But there is a source of data from many beautiful, well-organized research companies out there, not just Frontline, of course. But we do find ourselves very passionate and very focused on the data collection and quality that we deliver. And that is up to date, fit for purpose for you and your products and your category and where you are in your life cycle in the country. And of course, the quality and of course, mappable. And you've seen the power of those maps that I just delivered. So keep the end in mind when designing methodologies, processes, and surveys, ensuring the maximum value can be extracted across all modules so you get the best value out of the data and your return on investment's good. And also, obviously, you need to be patient in terms of that data collection and how it gets extracted and delivered inside the business and then activated. And then to be able to segment, target, and understand your end customer and consumer as well as your shoppers, and offer an effective customer service policy will set you up to win in the market and keep winning in the market. It's something that you should not give little time to, but give a lot of time to. And then obviously, number 5, be flexible, guys, be nimble, and above all, have fun and get excited about your projects and about the learnings that you're going to have. And it's normally a deep and steep learning curve when doing work and consulting and distribution in Africa. Thank you for your time. I had a pleasure talking to you guys, and I'll open the floor up to questions and I'll answer them to my best of my ability. Thanks, guys. Cheers for now.